Hi, my name is Kimbria Alfrenar, and today I'm going to be talking about chocolate. Not this kind, I'm talking about a different kind. Anyway, what happened? So, SpongeBob and Patrick saw one of Squidward's magazines, and they decided they wanted to be rich. They asked Squidward, what do we have to do to be rich? And he said, entrepreneurship. So they decided they wanted to sell chocolate. Cool. There's a recurring character, and it's this sales guy. This sales guy scams Patrick and SpongeBob multiple times with standard sales pitches for chocolate carrying bags and bags for carrying the chocolate carrying bags. And then also he outright lied about his glass bones and how he broke his legs every morning, his arms every afternoon, and he went to bed with heart attacks or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, right? So in the end, SpongeBob and Patrick still win because the infamous chocolate guy buys all of their chocolate, buys all of their chocolate for mounds of cash, and they end up going on a date with some ladies. So nobody loses technically, but we're still gonna check the ethical actors of this whole thing. So the main ethical actor we're going to be looking at is this sales guy. I do not know his name, so therefore he will be called Sales Guy. We're going to talk about his actions, his schemes, his lies, and whether or not they were ethical or unethical. So before we get into all of that, I have to elaborate some more on the ethical standards that I'm going to be using to test the sales guy's actions. So we talked a lot about what defines a good action or what defines good in terms of society and class. So I'm kind of going to be using what we talked about in class as the ethical standards in this case. So one, anything that is good in this case increases happiness, increases a person's well-being, mental health, I guess, but I'm just gonna call it this, increases happiness. Two, increases wealth/prosperity. I'm only talking in terms of money. I feel like wealth can have multiple definitions, but we're only talking in terms of coin. So increases wealth, that's two. Three, increases productivity in terms of work, in terms of your contributions to society, those main things. And four, increases education, knowledge, things like that. So now that we have our ethical standards in place, we can start testing out the sales guy and his actions and whether or not they are ethical or unethical. So I'm gonna start with the unethical side, then move to ethical, and then come to a conclusion. Unethical. He decreased SpongeBob and Patrick's happiness. We said one of the standards for what is good is something that increases happiness. And his actions, his coercions, him scamming them into buying things that they didn't need to buy, did cause SpongeBob and Patrick to feel down on themselves. SpongeBob did end up feeling like he didn't understand sales. I feel like Patrick was kind of okay. He was eating chocolate. But SpongeBob felt like he wasn't living to his sales potential. Like his little mini very brief small business was not prospering to the level that it could have been prospering because things just weren't working out. So it could be argued that the sales guy kind of did contribute to SpongeBob and Patrick's unhappiness. Also, he lied about breaking his bones every 2 seconds or whatever he said, and his lies did cause SpongeBob and Patrick to be very, very sad. So it can be said that it's unethical that he lied to them and caused them to almost cry. He also, second thing, decreased the amount of money that they had. We said anything that is good also increases wealth and prosperity in terms of money. SpongeBob and Patrick spent a lot of money on this man. They bought bags to carry bags, and then they bought a bunch of chocolate that they did not need to buy since they already had chocolate. Now, this guy definitely coerced them into buying chocolate that they didn't need to buy, or into buying bags and stuff, products, whatever, that they did not need to buy. And the way that he did it could be said to be unethical. He lied. He didn't tell the truth. He stretched the truth excessively, and he saw their vulnerability and tried to profit off of that. And that is not a good thing. And it caused SpongeBob and Patrick to lose money. So that's the second thing. Third thing, SpongeBob and Patrick's productivity did decrease. We kind of defined productivity in terms of work and contributions to society, and SpongeBob and Patrick were way busier buying stuff from this dude than they were actually selling things, whatever. But their productivity definitely was decreased. Now, we could argue that it wasn't directly the sales guy's fault, but at the same time, SpongeBob and Patrick were putting in that work and knocking on doors, and this guy just happened to constantly be behind these doors, making them think that they were seeing new people when in fact they really weren't. And again, that's decreasing their productivity. So there's that. On the positive side, we could say that SpongeBob and Patrick's education increased. They kind of learned how to scam. There was a part in the episode where SpongeBob and Patrick realized that one way for them to sell things was for them to stretch the truth. So they were really about to act like they needed some operation to get people to sell chocolate. They kind of learned something about scamming. So their education, I don't know if it's good education, but their education did increase. Second thing, the sales guy's own wealth and happiness and productivity did increase. He gained a lot of money from getting SpongeBob and Patrick to buy a bunch of things. He was definitely happy about it, because who would not be happy about more money? And he was productive. He was, again, behind every door. He was putting in that work to scam. You have to respect it, low key. He was there. So his productivity, his own productivity, was increased. Now, is he using his productivity to contribute to society? Not at all, but he's being productive. So comparing these things, we need to come to a conclusion about whether or not his actions are ethical or unethical. The way that the sales guy was getting to his money and the way that he was increasing his happiness and productivity was at the expense of SpongeBob and Patrick, and it was at the expense of their vulnerability and their, no offense to them, but their stupidity, and that is not okay. Now, you could argue that SpongeBob's happiness, money, and productivity decreasing kind of is equal almost to the other dudes or the sales guys' wealth and happiness and productivity increasing. You could kind of argue that they cancel each other out. However, when you look at each of these persons' value to society, there is a difference. SpongeBob is SpongeBob, Patrick is Patrick. They are iconic characters that are watched by millions of kids around the world. They definitely contributed way more to society than this random sales guy that has a couple of cameos. So if we compare the negatives that happen to SpongeBob to the positives that happen to the sales guy, the negatives definitely do hold more of a weight because of who SpongeBob and Patrick are. You have to put respect on SpongeBob and Patrick's names. Therefore, any negative that occurs to SpongeBob and Patrick is taken personally by people like me, okay, and other fans of SpongeBob and Patrick. So any negative to SpongeBob and Patrick is definitely more impactful. It does more harm than the positives that happen to the sales guy. So therefore, it can be argued that the sales guy's actions are unethical because the negatives outweigh the bad or the positive. Thank you for coming to my tech talk, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.